Hi, I'm Justine, the nerdy half of the Breakaway Bravehearts, and today I want to share with you a really special video. This site I consider to be the most significant site in New Zealand history and an exemplar of social tourism in action. I'm talking about the Waitangi Grounds in Waitangi in New Zealand's beautiful Bay of Islands, North Island, New Zealand. Today's video is a special one, not only because it ticks nearly every point in our 5.5-star review: social good, economic benefit, accessibility, relationships, and of course sustainability, but also because I'm joined by the fabulous Cece, a tour guide here at the grounds, who was kind enough to let me interview her after her tour.
My name's Cece, I'm the friendly local historian, and my favourite thing to do is tell a captive audience all about why Waitangi is the best place to visit in this country.
Before we start, you should know I haven't received any payment for this review. It's just my open and honest opinion of what I experienced on the day. Spoiler alert, it was fantastic, so make sure you stay to the end of the video so that you can see how it ticked nearly every box. But first I'm going to share with you some of the history of the ground so you can understand why it's so important. You know what, I think I'll let Cece explain. She does it far better than I do. Her passion just shines.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nō mai, haere mai, ko Waitangi tēnei. Welcome, 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 welcome all. This is Waitangi, and right now you're standing in the most significant historical location that Aotearoa has to offer. This place that we call the Bay of Islands was a place of firsts. The first human arrival to these islands, the Polynesian voyager Kupe, sailed into the inner Bay of Islands on his waka Matawhaurua. Following James Cook's arrival here in the 1770s, New Zealand's first official British resident called these grounds home, and this place is where New Zealand's founding documents were forged and first signed. These are He Whakaputanga o Te Rangatiratanga o Nu Tereni, in other words, our Declaration of Independence, and the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And if you're wondering, Cece, why is New Zealand's second founding document in such a sad-looking state? I'm going to tell you a secret. We lost it. It went missing and was found down in Wellington, quite literally waterlogged and chewed on by rats. I like to use this as a metaphor for how the Treaty of Waitangi was treated in 19th century New Zealand, as that partnership between Maori leaders and the British Crown was swept under the rug by the 19th century government, taking until the protests of the 1970s for Te Tiriti o Waitangi to begin to gain legal recognition.
Tragically, the treaty was disrespected by many generations, and that's left a lasting impact on New Zealand society today. Lucky for us, Maori have stood firm to make sure they get the rights and respect that's afforded to them through the original treaty. And slowly we're starting to make amends. Cece's tour goes into great detail about the events and the people that have brought us what we have in modern-day Aotearoa New Zealand. She shows particular respect for the stories of the people who were here first, the indigenous Maori.
But come with me because I want to show you my favourite part of this building. It's not the gorgeous architecture, surprisingly, it's this whakairo carving above the door. The woman you see above the door was alive in the early 1800s, and her name was Te Ao Kaparangi. Te Ao Kaparangi came from Rotorua, famous for its sulphuric mud pools and pristine natural landscapes. But she was taken from Rotorua by a Ngāpuhi war party and consequently found herself up here in Ngāpuhi territory. And the group of Ngāpuhi she was affiliated with was led by a either famous or infamous figure, depending which part of the country you're from. His name was Hongi Hika. Now, infamous, of course, because of the Musket Wars, because see, when Hongi Hika returned to Aotearoa, he brought with him a lot of weapons, specifically the musket. And in 1823, he was going to wage war south again. Hongi Hika knew he would outgun the other warriors, going from may the strongest man win to who had the newest weapons. And Te Ao Kaparangi saw her homeland in Rotorua in the firing line. So she approached Hongi Hika and begged him to spare her people. He told her, "Those who pass between your legs shall be spared." Now, when you see a translation from Māori to English, you'll find a couple of things. There's a lot of figurative and metaphorical language and a lot of emotion behind it. Now, in this case, Parihaka was actually talking about her children, those who had come from between her legs. But Te Ao Kaparangi knew, as a rangatira, he couldn't take back anything he said. So she had an idea. And then Te Ao Kaparangi began to voyage back to Rotorua. When she arrived, she called her people towards her, climbed on top of the wharenui, the carved meeting house, and as you see here above the door, she spread her legs and called for the people of her village to pass between her legs. This granted protection of more than 100 people, and Parihaka was so mad about that, she and her husband were both banned from ever returning to this part of the country again. But see, she wasn't just twisting his words, because by passing between a woman's legs, you lose any blessing bestowed on you by Tumatoinga, the god of war. That's why Te Ao Kaparangi is at our visitor centre today. Waitangi is a place of peace. Welcome to everyone. You are welcome here.
These welcoming treaty grounds are extensive, so you're going to need good walking shoes and quite a bit of time to make sure you get to see what New Zealand's known best for, our nature. Linking all the different aspects of the grounds, the wharenui, the treaty house, the waka, the museums, the cafe, and the shop, is a native forest and lake, plus open grounds with a view across the bay.
I want to introduce you to a beautiful boardwalk. This boardwalk shares the name of the Atua, the god of forest and birds, Tāne Mahuta. I introduce you to the realm of Tāne, Te Wharenui a Tāne.
As we walked through this beautiful landscape, Cece told us the indigenous origin story of Aotearoa, and then about the arrival of whalers, gold seekers and colonists, all which led to the creation of the Treaty of Waitangi. I loved her explanation of how the Maori perceived their first visitors.
And as a side note, the word Māori means normal. Pakeha for New Zealand Europeans like myself, that just means other, so not Māori. I like to think that conversation went a bit like, so what type of people are you? We're normal, what the hell are you?
There are a lot of entertaining stories about this period of time when Aotearoa became a British colony, New Zealand. And CC is a passionate storyteller. She talked about the infamous Kororareka, the hellhole of the Pacific, about the creation of a flag and the Declaration of Independence. I haven't included all her stories in this video, as I recommend you go and take the tour yourself. But I am going to share with you a short extract of her explanations around the main issues with the treaty. This is really important because it's led to social inequities that we are still experiencing today.
Today, to understand the Treaty of Waitangi, we're going to talk about two things. One are the documents themselves, and two are how they were treated by the 19th century government. The reason I'm saying documents, plural, isn't just because there were 9 different copies. The Māori language version and the English language version are fundamentally different in meaning. Now, Article the 1st in English states that Māori cede all sovereignty to Queen Victoria. But here's the kicker, the Māori language version does not reference sovereignty. It promises Queen Victoria te kawanatanga katoa, all the power as a governor. What's the difference between a sovereign and a governor? A sovereign ruler, a king or queen, they appoint a governor, not the other way around. The sovereign has the more ultimate power. Māori leaders did not sign to cede sovereignty to Queen Victoria. They understood they were maintaining the independence, the ability to oversee their people and places, but in addition, extending Queen Victoria all the powers as a governor across the country. In this place here, this is where that document was first signed. On the 6th of February 1840, this harbour around us was full of both European ships and Māori waka. So haere mai, come into the treaty house with me. This room, this is where James Busby, the official British resident, Captain William Hobson on his mission from the Crown, and the Reverend Henry Williams gathered, right here in the parlour room, to forge the Treaty of Waitangi.
I find it intriguing to imagine what it went on in the minds of those British officials who first created that treaty, and if they really thought through the implications of their hasty work. CC explained that differences in translation and conceptual understandings happened in other sections of the treaty too. So as soon as both parties tried to act on what they thought they had signed to, they could see the contradictions, and war soon erupted. If you'd like to learn more about the war between Maori and British, check out the nearby site of Ruapekapeka. That's where the final battle took place. You might want to see our review. I think the link's up here somewhere. It's another social tourism review that will talk you through that site. The aftermath of war was devastating for Māori. There was significant population decrease, disease, poverty, restrictions to education and to social services, all based on a policy of assimilating what was considered a dying race. Māori were also punished for their so-called rebellion by land confiscation. Cece's tour goes into depth around these events, and it helps us understand what shaped New Zealand today. There's one particular story that I want to share with you in full. It's the story of Parihaka, and I have to confess, it brought tears to my eyes.
Land confiscation became an increasing threat to Māori. And when we talk about the different statistics, this many hectares of land, over 1 million in the Waikato region alone following the New Zealand Wars, I think that takes away the human side, because we have to remember that every member of those statistics, they were a real person with hobbies, passions, a whānau, a place that they called home. So I want you to think about the people rather than the statistics. And I'm going to tell you the story of the invasion of the pacifist village of Parihaka. In the early 1880s, nestled away in the region of Taranaki, Parihaka was the largest Māori village in the country. It had its own bank, its own bakery, surrounding farmland. It was established by prophets of peace, including Te Whiti o Rongomai and Tohu Kākahi. Now, Te Whiti and Tohu were not only influential in pacifist protest here in New Zealand, they're people that Mahatma Gandhi cited an inspiration in his own learning. Now, that's the reason why it was so large. They had Parihaka open to people of different iwi, different tribes. If you've been displaced by war, disease, inequitable access to healthcare, land sales occurring without you even being aware of it, or land confiscation following the wars, you could find refuge here. But like much of Taranaki, Parihaka was officially confiscated by the 19th century government. Now, surveyors would be sent in to divide up the land, but upon placing their surveyors, residents would often remove them, and sometimes they'd plough the land just to make it more annoying for them to come back and do it again. They'd just carry on farming. Now, Te Whiti and Tohu were firm activists in maintaining Māori land simply by refusing to leave. But the decision was made by the 19th century government that Parihaka would be taken by force. Now, many of you here today probably know the 5th of November is Guy Fawkes Day, but it is also the anniversary of the invasion of the pacifist village of Parihaka. Because on the 5th of November 1881, approximately 1,600 volunteer soldiers marched to the open gates of Parihaka, where they were welcomed by a row of over 200 children singing. They were directed by an elderly man leaning on a carved wooden cane, and one of the men who was marching within that army. He wrote in his diary about how he watched as his leader on horseback raced up to the children, so close that he not only saw mud splattering their faces, but he also commented that the children didn't stop singing. This volunteer army met no resistance because Parihaka was fundamentally pacifist. Now, a rough English translation of what Tohu Kākahi told his followers was that even if the fire of their muskets singes our eyelashes, we will not fight back. It is them who want war, not us. By the end of 7 days, the men of Parihaka were arrested and placed in jail without trial, often forced into labour camps off the coast of the South Island that meet the modern-day definition of a concentration camp. While the women who remained at Parihaka had to find new means of living, because by the end of 7 days, the colonial government gave the clear for what was once the largest Māori village in the country to be burned to the ground. Today, the invasion of Parihaka symbolises the extent to which New Zealand's 19th century government was prepared to engage in violence in order to acquire land. But talking about this today isn't about placing blame or pointing fingers. Māori aren't looking at New Zealand Europeans like myself and telling people to leave. But if we're going to understand the reality of our founding documents, The contrast between what was written in English and Māori, what was signed and what happened. Why we have the statistics for generational poverty, trauma. Why the Māori language went from being spoken by 99% in 1840 to 5% according to the last statistic today. We have to talk about these not so fun facts in our history as well as the fun facts. Because those histories, those pasts, it's not in the distant past. We're a very young country, and this is what shaped New Zealand to be the way it is today. I want to share with you a proverb, a whakatauki. This whakatauki says, kia whakatomere te haere whakamua. I walk backwards into my future with my eyes facing my past.
I consider CC's storytelling abilities to be an exemplar of the first point on our social goods star, which reflects how well a site builds positive bonds and increased understanding of local communities. You can see how passionate she is about the stories while trying to make connections with her visitors. She is very clear about what new understanding she wants people to leave with.
So I hope by the end of the tour, people come away feeling they have a connection to this place, whether it's a shared history if you're from another colony or if you're Indigenous yourself, that they feel they have a connection to this place and that they understand the Treaty of Waitangi and Te Tiriti o Waitangi are different. And Māori did not cede sovereignty in the version that the chief signed. I think those from abroad have this idea that New Zealand's some great place when it comes to race relation, but we have the same issues as every other colony, and I think that by calling attention to this, people can start to understand, hey, when we see this protest, it's not just people being bitter, it is very justified when you look back at it. If I was Māori and had that taken away from me, I'd be pretty angry too. I think as well, with me being a New Zealand European, the best, kindest comment that I've ever received was actually from a co-worker. It has always stuck with me. She said, if I spoke about Parihaka or any of that, I'd be called an angry Māori, but they can't call you an angry Māori because you're Pākehā. So I feel I get to use my white privilege in this role in order to share this with the world. It shows people not only what we're fighting for as a country, but the misconceptions they have about us being some great place for race relations. We are getting better as a country. The last Waitangi Day, it was beautiful. There was it was aroha, there was love. This right here, this is where the elected officials were welcomed. Prime Minister and elected officials, they had the haka pōwhiri here, and the wharirunanga, that's where everyone was speaking. So there was a lot of debate there, there's crowds. I think people get a bit of a misconception around protest and Waitangi Day. It's not angry, it's calling to attention that, hey, you know, it hasn't been resolved yet. It's an ongoing history, which is why our mission to showcase the ongoing promise of the Treaty of Waitangi. This isn't the distant history. This is New Zealand today. This is how we're going to move forward as one people. He iwi tahi tātou. How we can help our Indigenous people get to the same point that they were promised, equal rights to those of British citizens. I want to know that my best friend is going to have the same healthcare outcomes as me. I've been given permission from her to share the story. Her grandmother had the Māori language beaten out of her in school, and now she, being my age, we're in our mid-20s and we're both working on learning reo. We've both signed up for a free course through Open Polytechnic, and I want to be able to speak Māori when she has kids to her kids. That's what I mean when I say it's a time of renaissance. We get to be at a point in time where we all have a role to play as New Zealanders in pulling back Māori culture, having it in the forefront, because it's something that makes our country absolutely beautiful.
The second point on our star asks how connections are made between locals and travellers. Once again, CC can take pride in the way that she strives to do this. The third and fourth points on this star refers to how well a site supports underrepresented groups or tells the lesser-known stories. I loved the way CC just wove Te Reo Māori into her tour, helping normalise it in daily speech. She even attempts to spread this language throughout the globe.
I want you to show off some reo Māori language along with your photos. So I'm going to teach you how to say the name Ngā Toki Mata Whaurua. But don't panic, it's real easy. Just repeat after me. Ngā Toki
Toki
Mata
Mata
Whaurua.
Rua.
Ngā toki mata whaurua. There we go. Tino pai, you got it.
Although I started with the word exemplary, I can't actually award the final point on this social good star because I don't think there are any volunteer opportunities here at the grounds that would suit travellers. CC, if you're watching this and I'm wrong, could you please say something in the comments so that I can update the star to a full star? The next star represents the economic benefit that the site brings to the local community. I asked CC to explain who funds the grounds and where does the profit go.
So 100% of the admission fees go into maintaining the grounds. So we're very grateful we got government funding post-COVID to keep the gates open, but at the end of the day, we really do rely on our manahiri, on our guests. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you all so much for giving a broke historian like myself employment, and of course protecting such a heritage place.
The land of the Waitangi Grounds was gifted to New Zealand, and it's managed by a board of trustees. CC acknowledged that while the grounds has received some government funding in the past, it's not quite enough to keep up the full maintenance that's needed.
I'd like to see just having the higher finance. So for example, look at this with the treaty house. This has been raised many times by us. We can see that there's damage. It takes a long time for things to be fixed. We've just got a new footpath. I think that if we had more funding so it wouldn't be such a long time, I want to see higher levels of maintenance for things like that.
I have to agree. This site is arguably the most important in our national history, so as a Kiwi taxpayer, I don't mind doing my bit to make sure it's preserved. We reserve a couple of points on the Treasury star to look at how well tourism providers support local employment, workers' rights, and opportunities to grow their career. So I asked CC how she felt about her work at this site.
The whanaungatanga here is one of the best parts about working here. They've taken better care of me than any organisation I've ever worked for. So I've been very blessed to have such awesome colleagues here. Oh, I'm going to start by telling you about one of my nearest and dearest colleagues, Mukai. He was the one who trained me, and it was all about the connections, making the connections to people, telling a story. And that's what I've taken with me as I've worked on my different tours. He's taken a lot of time to sit down with me where I say, hey, well, you know, I've got this approach, but I know it comes from a bit of a colonist approach of history because I'm reading books written by New Zealand Europeans and I want to understand the kōrero behind it that you understand. He has taken so much time to share his knowledge with me, help me understand the concepts, and having people like that have taught me so much has enriched my own knowledge and understanding. And the feel that I get here, manaakitanga. I've been in other places where manaakitanga is written down as a value, but I haven't felt it like this before. I feel loved, respected, and looked after here.
So a definite full star for economic impact. Our next BB star is about accessibility, because it's really important that no one's excluded from an opportunity like this, and that everybody is made to feel valued for who they are. CC obviously agrees, because she goes to special efforts to make sure everyone has access to her tours. She takes care to get to know the visitors and to adapt to their needs.
So if I have someone with access needs on a tour, I'll talk to them first about what route to take. For people with hearing differences, we use a thing called tour mates. I've had great feedback from people with hearing aids, that it sits on top of your ear and that helps you hearing perfectly. It also means that they can walk around and there's a good 20-metre radius of me. So often I'll spend a good 15 minutes here talking and they're going around the house, and you know, if they want to listen they can, otherwise they can unplug and do their own thing. I've only ever had one person who was blind, and she was completely blind, and what I do is I unplug after talking about something and I'll come up to her and say, hey, can I take your hand? And I'll put her hand over the carving and explain, so this is exactly who I'm talking about. Gave her a feel of Nuku Tawhiti's face and said, well, this is who he is, what you're feeling there, that's his nose. Those are his tāmoko, his facial tattoos. This is who he is. So I think it's about finding ways to interact with each individual as they need. I want everyone to get something out of this.
I really applaud CC's adaptations. It's actually the first time that we've come across a site that's taken care to cater for those with sight impairments. The next point on our accessibility star refers to how well the site shows respect for the LGBTQ+ community. The Treaty Grounds site has unisex toilets and complies with the country's anti-discrimination laws. Aotearoa New Zealand scores 75 out of 100 on the Equaldex ranking. So a little bit of work to do yet. I've popped their link in the description so you can see more info. The menu at Parihaka Cafe included menu variants, but I didn't see a lot of pure vegan options, to be honest. There wasn't any specification around kosher or halal options. The final point on this star checks that a range of social perspectives have been presented. CC was really candid and open with me about how she felt about the use of Maori perspectives in a tourism setting.
The tourists I see coming here, they want to know about Te Ao Māori. They want to know about the history of our Indigenous people, how Māori feel about this document, and the performances, the culture, the kapahaka, the song, the music, the language, how Māori interpreted these things. I feel that we're very happy to make money out of tourism from Māori, but if we're going to use that as a way to make money, we need to awhi our Māori people. We need to make sure that they're getting stuff out of that too, and that it's not just something we put on for show.
CC's whole approach to her work made me want to award the full relationship star immediately. Her tour was incredibly enjoyable and provided all the information I needed. CC delivered such high quality service, more than I could have hoped for. While entry to the grounds is a little bit more expensive than other tourist sites in the area, it does include the tour, a cultural experience, and access to both museums and all the historical buildings. So I consider it value for money. CC takes her guests to heart, and relationships are her specialty.
I try and take the history as a story, and that's another thing about the whanaungatanga, making connections, why I go around talking about all the different groups of people who arrive. So it's not just about the what and here we are, there's a lot of why and who behind it that we get to share. We make the different connections to people, and that seems to be something that the tourists really take away from it when they get that connection to us. I come home so excited. I keep a little diary and I often write in like very special customers that I get, whether it's because they share their culture or if they were just very moved. One that I always remember from talking about Parihaka, I looked up and there was an American man on my tour and he was just in tears. So I gave him a big hug and I said, "Look sir, do you trust me?" I took him up to the front, so I made sure that he was the one to accept the taki, the challenge, the offering of peace, and he clearly was feeling that emotion here that comes into it. And that's why I say it's about storytelling. It's not just about the history facts, it's about the people in that history. He tangata, it's about the people.
Our final star is a big one, but I have to say once again, the grounds showed exemplary practice and sustainability. You can reach Waitangi Grounds via public transport. It is a little bit tricky and you'll have to plan ahead. First, make your way to Parihaka. You can get there via bus from Auckland or Whangarei. Then you have two options. You can walk from Parihaka, that's about 25 minutes, or Google says there is a shuttle bus. You'll have to check that out once you're there. Staff at the grounds work hard to make sure they're continuously reducing their landfill waste. They have their own recycling stations on site, and visitors can help by making sure they use the specially designed bin system. All of the suppliers that work with the grounds are asked to reduce their use of plastics and to try and use packaging that can be recycled or reused. They've also got compost bins and produce their own compost to use in the gardens. In a cycle of sustainability, the head gardener then plants vegetables and herbs which the cafe uses. The Waitangi National Trust keeps a close eye on its carbon footprint. They have 503 hectares of land, and that gives a high annual carbon sequestration rate, and that's used to offset their annual emissions. Where possible, they employ staff who live locally to try and bring down that travel emission as well. On their biggest event of the year, Waitangi Day, they aim for a zero waste policy. This event sees 60,000 participants in one day, and so far they're able to convert 90% of waste from landfill to recycling. Their goal is to reach 100% conversion in 5 years. Finally, in their most recent build, they've put solar panels on the museum, and they're currently scoping out the possibility of a solar farm to support the entire estate. So as far as sustainability is concerned, we think they set a pretty good example for other providers. And overall, a fabulous experience for everyone who visits. I can't speak highly enough of CC and her colleagues. They've made this vital piece of my country's history just come to life. I really hope you get a chance to visit and to take the tour for yourself. I've only given you a tiny portion of her kōrero, so I hope you check it out for yourself and experience her passion and her level of detail. When you do, say kia ora from me. And if you're interested in more social tourism opportunities in New Zealand, check out our other videos and don't forget to hit subscribe and the notifications bell. Next, we're off to the United Kingdom to check out social tourism opportunities in Daryl's homeland. I hope you'll join us then. Till then, happy travels everyone!